According to the three extraordinary Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, Ishmael is the child of Abraham and Hagar. Ishmael and his mother were driven to the desert following the birth of Isaac, Abraham's second child through Sarah. Ishmael was a minor figure in Judaism and Christianity from that point on, but he continued to play a major role in Islamic culture, which suggests that he became accustomed to Mecca. In the Jewish sacred texts, starting 16, 116, 17, 18, 26, 21, 121, Abraham's spouse Sarah initially failed to become pregnant, so she gave Abraham her maidservant Hagar to think of a child. Ishmael was born into Abraham's family and raised there. Regardless, Sarah considered Isaac, with whom God had made his promise, nearly 13 years later. Isaac was Abraham's sole heir, and Ishmael and Hagar were driven to the desert. However, God promised that Ishmael would establish his unique nation. In the Quran, Ishmael is portrayed as a messenger and a prophet, 1954, and he is generally regarded as the Bedouins' forefather by both Jews and people from Middle Eastern countries. Anyway, little is said about him in the Quran itself next to his task as a prophet. It suggests that he helped Abraham in building Islam's most blessed structure, the Kaaba in Mecca 127. The majority of Islamic practices pertaining to Ishmael are derived from non-scriptural sources like hadith, tafsir, Islamic interpretation, and Qia al-Anbiya, prophets' accounts. The most well-known of these customs states that after Ishmael and Hagar were exiled, they settled in Mecca, where they had found assistance in water at the well of Zamzam. Following that, during the Hajj, journey, ceremonies, and on Eid al-Adha, Abraham attempted to forfeit Ishmael and Min, rather than Isaac, as stated in the Hebrew scripture. In Islamic books, we have a lot of information about Ishmael. In this video now, we will shed the light in detail on the life of Ishmael according to Islamic views. Quranic narrative of Ismail. Ishmael was the first child Abraham had, and Hagar was his mother. The story can be told in a number of different ways, and some of which include a prophecy about Ishmael's birth. One example comes from the book of Ibn Kathir, a very persuasive Arab historian. In his account, an angel tells Hagar, who is about to give birth, to name her child Ishmael and says, his hand would be over everyone, and the hand of everyone would be against him. Every terrain would be under the control of his brothers. Ibn Kathir comments that this foretells of Muhammad's leadership. Ishmael and Hagar taken to Mecca by Abraham. In Islamic texts, Ishmael and Hagar's journey to Mecca with Abraham is an important part of the story because it brings the focus to Mecca and marks the beginning of Mecca's blessing as a holy place. According to Islamic tradition, God asked Abraham to bring Hagar and Ishmael to Mecca. Later, Abraham returned to Mecca to build the Kaaba. In a lot of these accounts, the Sakina, something like a wind or spirit sent by God, or the angel Gabriel, Jibril, leads them to the area of the Kaaba. As a result, Abraham builds it and then leaves the other two there. Different versions discussed below say that Ishmael participated in the building of the Kaaba later. It is generally believed that when Abraham leaves Ishmael and Hagar, she inquires as to whom he is entrusting them. Hagar then responds in a way that demonstrates her confidence, stating that she accepts that God will direct them. He responds that he is entrusting them to God. Ishmael appears to be severely dehydrated after Hagar and Ishmael run out of water. Hagar is troubled and seeks water, running volatilely between Al-Marwa and Al-Safa's slopes multiple times. Muslims then remember Hagar for this demonstration during the Hajj, or pilgrimage, in which they run between these identical slopes as part of the Sa'i. When she returns to Ishmael, may have been scratching the ground with their heel or finger. As a result, water begins to flow, and Hagar either collects some of it or blocks it. The name of this spring or well is Zamzam. A passing clan known as the Jurim eventually observes birds orbiting the water and conducts research. They ask if they can settle there, which she lets them do. There are many versions that say that as Ishmael got older, the clan gave him other things. The sacrifice. Although the Taurat, the Arabic name for the Torah within its context as an Islamic heavenly book, indicates that Isaac was bound, some Muslims believe that Abraham was instructed to give up his other child, Ishmael. However, the Quran does not mention the child's name. A couple of structures relate Satan endeavoring to keep God's organization from being consented by visiting Hagar, Ishmael, and Abraham. When Satan says that Abraham will give up Ishmael, everyone responds that they should do as God told them to. Finally, Abraham tells Ishmael about the request, and that he will lose Ishmael. He also tells Abraham to pay attention to God. Ishmael is frequently depicted as giving Abraham a number of instructions, such as to return his shirt to Hagar, tie him securely, sharpen the blade, and place him face down so that he will never waver in his resolve to follow God. As Abraham attempts to sacrifice Ishmael, either the knife is turned over in his hand, or copper appears on Ishmael to prevent the death, and God tells Abraham that he has fulfilled the command. Muslims worldwide engage in an annual practice during Eid al-Adha, where they sacrifice an animal to honor Abraham's act of devotion and to uphold the virtue of selflessness in service to God. Subsequent historiographic literature incorporates the biblical account, wherein a ram is provided as a substitute for Ishmael and is consequently sacrificed instead. In this story, Ishmael's actions have made him a shining example of hospitality and obedience. When compared to the narrative in the Bible, this story in the Quran is novel because Abraham talks to his child, whoever it is believed to be, and the child agrees with the plan to perform a sacrifice. Ishmael, as previously demonstrated, ensures in various ways that neither he nor his father deviate from their duty to God in various renditions. In this way, Ishmael is an example of surrendering one's will to God, a fundamental Islamic characteristic. Although current Muslims generally agree that Ishmael was the child who was practically lost, scholars and historians of early Islam engage in a great deal of debate. To tell the truth, there are so strong arguments in favor of both that it is determined that practices claim Isaac was the child and practices claim Ishmael. The disagreement regarding which son is involved underscores the story's profound significance, including its setting and the individuals involved. It is argued that the narrative originated in rabbinic texts and was later adapted to Islam to give Mecca significance and link it to the journey. There are actually multiple perspectives when examining the Quranic text to determine which child was to be forfeited. The most convincing argument for Ishmael in the Quran is that Ishmael was going to be forfeited because, immediately following the sacrifice story, Abraham was told about Isaac's impending birth. Construction of the Kaaba. Although each version of the construction of the Kaaba differs significantly, all of them involve Abraham building or cleaning the Kaaba before God called Abraham to make the Hajj, or pilgrimage, at a later time. When and how these events took place, whether or not Ishmael assisted his father, the dark stone's attention or oversight, and otherworldly involvement all differ between these accounts. The majority of accounts that Ishmael was involved in the process portray Abraham visiting Ishmael for the third time in Mecca, where they built the Kaaba. There is a legend that Ishmael sought a final stone, but Abraham did not acknowledge the one he brought back. Instead, Abraham had created the dark stone after a holy messenger brought it. Ishmael was left at the Kaaba, tasked with observing it and demonstrating the Hajj to others. A few researchers believe that the diversity of the Hajj's beginnings reflects Abraham's relationship with the Hajj after Islam was founded to help eradicate its ties to early agnostic practices. Who was sacrificed, Ishmael or Isaac? The question of who was sacrificed, Ishmael or Isaac, is a subject of religious significance and interpretation. In Abrahamic traditions, namely Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the story revolves around the willingness of Abraham, also known as Ibrahim, to sacrifice his son as an act of obedience to God's command. According to the Hebrew Bible and the Old Testament of the Christian Bible, Abraham was instructed by God to offer his son Isaac as a sacrifice on Mount Moriah. As Abraham prepared to carry out this act, an angel intervened and provided a ram as a substitute sacrifice, sparing Isaac's life. This event is known as the binding of Isaac, or the Akedah in Jewish tradition. In Islamic tradition, the narrative slightly differs. The Quran states that God commanded Abraham to sacrifice his son, referring to him as his only son, without explicitly naming him as Isaac or Ishmael. Muslims generally believe that the son in question was Ishmael, as he is considered the ancestor of the Prophet Muhammad. The story highlights Abraham's unwavering faith and submission to God's will. Like the biblical account, an angel intervened and provided a ram for sacrifice instead. The question of whether Isaac or Ishmael was the intended sacrifice has led to theological debates and differing interpretations among religious scholars and traditions. Jewish and Christian interpretations generally associate the event with Isaac, while Muslims attribute it to Ishmael. Ultimately, the specific identity of the son is subject to religious beliefs and interpretations, and the story itself serves as a testament to the concept of faith and obedience to God across Abrahamic religions.
If you found this video enjoyable, please consider liking and sharing it. Additionally, subscribing to this channel will ensure that you receive more updates in the future. Thank you.